Hello everyone, I am Jack and I'm back, and let me show you what I got. So this is the front end that I decided was the best one to work with, and there is the carbon fiber flare, Fender flare, C2 Grand Sport Fender flare that goes to that C6 over there. Well, I needed another one, but it needed to be slightly different for the C7. So what I did was I took the original C2 Fender flare mold and made a mold of just the Fender flare part of it. I said, oh, that'll be easy because they look alike, right? Well, the problem is they're not very much alike, not anywhere near as close as I thought. If I measure from that body line down to the end, it is 16 or 17 inches, 17 let's call it. If I measure from the same body line down to, let's do it the other way, it's a little easier to do, flip it upside down, put it against there, it is 22 inches. That's 5 inches difference. So after seeing that, that reminds me why this carbon fiber one was such a pain to do, and it took several days, and it's because I had to extend it 5 inches. Well, I can't just extend it 5 inches because there's a curve right there. If I move that down 5 inches, then I got to figure out how to make the curve in between, and then I found out that, oh, if I keep the same curve, it's going to start curving in, which I obviously didn't want to do. So I needed a straight section, and by the time I got done, it took me, like I said, several days to do. Option B, which is what I'm doing now, I want to make a copy of this Fender flare. All right, let's see. So to do that, it's not finished. It has exposed carbon fiber. I sanded the high spots and stuff to get it as smooth as I could, but I didn't want to mess with protecting it the typical way. I didn't want to use body filler. I'm trying to make that car as much carbon fiber, pure carbon fiber as possible with little to no body filler. So that was an option. Didn't want to paint it because then I have to take the paint off. A lot of different options that I decided not to do. What I did decide to do is take some clear packing tape and put it all over this. That way I don't have to worry about anything sticking to it. I could wax it. There's a reason I'm not going to. The reason I'm not going to is because if I wax it, then when I put the fiberglass on it, the fiberglass doesn't really want to stick to it, and then I have issues with that. The reason why that's an issue is for areas like this. All right, so I need the fiberglass to come down here, here, and then I want to get this curve right here, this radius. Then it needs to come over here, and it needs to make that radius. And it needs to come down, and it needs to make that radius. Well, what I found out in the past is I'll get it down there, it'll look pretty good, but I go, it's not quite holding here. So I'll pull it to get it to follow this curve better, and it pulls it out of there. Same thing here, I pull it here, and it tends to pull it out of there. If this surface is waxed, then it slides across this surface really, really easily, the fiberglass does. So I could tug it here, and it'll start pulling here and here and here, and I'll end up screwing this up. By not putting the wax on there, there's at least a little bit of tension trying to hold the fiberglass to the surface. So as long as I get all of this as good as I can get it, I can tug a little bit on this, not a lot, but a little bit, but this flat surface right here will try to stick and stay. With the wax on there, it literally just slides right off. The disadvantage is it's going to be a little bit harder to pull the mold off, but I found out that fiberglass does not stick well to this aluminized tape. It does not stick well to this packing tape. Sticks a little bit, but not real well. So it's going to be a little harder to pull it off, but the advantage is going to be I'm going to be able to get it to follow the surface. And again, I would love to get this in one shot. This is really difficult to do, to get something like this, to get the fiberglass to roll around here, and stick to all the surfaces. If I was to do it right, I would make a strip of something, let's say metal, and put it on the inside of here so that I can push it in, but then what happens is it tends to push out right here. So I might do that. I'll have to play it by ear and see what happens. I'm going to try to do it without that, but if I have to, I've got the metal in there, I've got the tin snips, I've got the clamps, I got everything I need to go with that route. I'm just hoping I don't have to. Speaking of metal, so the issue I had was that this can't be pushed in because of this right here, this lip right here. This really should be pushed in another inch here. Well, by the time it's an inch here, it's about 4 inches here. And I wanted to get a good crease right here, this body seam, body crease right here. So I got a piece of metal, bent it. I didn't do a great job. I could have done a lot better, but for what I'm doing, it didn't matter. This is probably going to get cut off, so it doesn't matter. Plus, see, all right. The other issue is obviously this thing's going to be out that much further. You can see at the front, there's where that crease really is. It's got to curve in, so there's no point in doing a really good job with this when it doesn't follow. Right. But what this does do, it allows me more length to line up that body crease all the way from there. So when I put it up against the door, I can see where it is in the front. I can adjust the angle, stand back, and see. I do know that it's going to curve down or slant down a little bit. It's just the way the original one was. I could have go through a lot of effort and try to straighten that up, but it's not worth it. Again, my whole goal with this is just to get the stupid thing done at this point. So it is going to slant down a little bit. If you look at the replicas for the Grand Sport, the C2 Grand Sport, they actually, one of them slants down a lot, the other one doesn't. The one that slants down a lot gets criticized for those that are looking for an exact copy of the original, although I don't know how they know. There's only 5 originals out there. But anyway, supposedly the slanting down deviates from the original. Don't know. But again, I'm not trying to get 100% original. I'm just trying to get something that reminds you of a C2 Grand Sport. So what I did was I covered the whole front end. This is that front end. This is kind of rough. It's just primer, or it's gel coat. I don't remember which. It's one of the two. Anyway, I didn't want to, same problem. I don't want to wax it. I don't want to paint it. I don't want to do any of that. So what I did was I got the aluminized tape and put it all over it. My plan is that at most, okay, so I could have done just the fender flare. But I decided, you know what, as long as I'm doing it, it's only a little extra time, a little extra fiberglass. Why don't I go ahead and make this whole nose piece right here, bend it up here so that what I could do is, if I had this top piece separate and something over here wasn't quite right, then what I can do is I could put the two together. So I need enough here so that I have a lip. And then I could use this and either put this on top of that one or put it under. I'd probably put under because it'd be easier to hide it. But anyway, it's going to give me more options in the future when I decide what I need to do to put this thing together. Because it is, as we know, a Frankenstein of a bunch of different pieces. What difference does it make if I add another piece? All right, so this is going to give me as much of this fender flare and as much as this fender as possible. Now again, what I'm going to have to do at some point is cut a slot here, because even here it's you know what, a couple of inches too wide here. So I will need to cut it and move it in if I use this much of it. I might not even use this much of it. So again, I'm just leaving all my options as open as possible so that I can do what I want to do. Now, with all of that said, I'm going to put fiberglass resin on top of this polyester. Then I'm going to use the chopped strand mat on top of that. I have a couple of options. One, I could go ahead and do this and I can make a mold out of the skin that I'm going to put on here. And that would allow me to make duplicate parts from the inside of that mold. The disadvantage is, as you can see, the surface is less than great, because here's a piece, it's screwed to this piece, this is screwed to that, on and on. And I had to extend that back part. If you remember, it ended right here. right? I needed to go all the way back to the door, so I put a piece behind there and then taped it. So that's another thing that's gonna look like crap. So I would have to, if I used it for a mold, I would have to go into the mold and spend a lot of time fixing the mold. I think it's a one-shot mold, so it's really not worth spending a lot of time to fix that mold. The other option, put the fiberglass skin on top of here and then try to get the outer surface of that skin as smooth as possible, and then use that whole piece as this section of the car. All right, disadvantage, I spent a lot of time and effort making this thing, and it ends up being redundant or scrap or whatever. So I've got to decide what to do there. I don't have to decide right now. I will see how this comes out. And oh, and then there's a third option. Go ahead and make this as a mold, but not a mold to actually make a part from. What I could do is use this, cut this thing into sections right here, fill it in wherever it fits, and then fill in the gaps using that part as a mold. So I've got 3 different options. I don't know which way I'm going to go at this point, but I don't have to decide right now. I just have to make this piece. Speaking of making this piece, so what I did was I went ahead and cut out a pattern, which is the way I do this. It's right behind here. Rather than flip this up, because I need it down right now, and the more I flip it up and down, the less the tape's going to hold. So I went ahead and cut this thing so that it fits on there, and then I taped it with the aluminum tape. In the past, I've used clamps. See that yellow clamp right there? The reason I use those is fiberglass doesn't stick to them, so it'll work. It leaves a funny little indentation there in the shape of that clamp, but that's tolerable. So what I'm going to do is, since I taped it, I'm going to come along with my resin and come all along this edge right here. Once I get this edge done, I'm going to flip this thing over. So I'm going to do the edge plus at least a little bit down here. Flip this over. I got my typical roller. I don't know where it is. Oh, it's right here. Just a little paint roller. I don't have the little fuzzy brush thing. You can't use foam with polyester resin because the polyester resin eats up the foam really quick. So I've got the fuzzy roller. It's around here somewhere. I'll get it in a minute. So I'll use that. So I will try to get this surface as good as I can. I do have the material that I can put on top of this once I get it there, and it can smooth out smoother than just the regular raw fiberglass. I may do that. That again leaves me that option of using this as the final piece. So I may do that. I'm going to put 2 layers on the parts that I know I'm going to use, which is all the way from this back edge. All of this is going to be 2 layers. Somewhere around here, I'm going to go to 1 layer because, like I said, I've got to be able to curve this in, and 2 layers makes it a little more difficult to do. So 1 layer is going to make this flexible enough that I can maneuver it and work with it and make it fit if I decide to go use more of this than I think I'm going to use. If I cared, you can see that pops down. I would do something, put a screw there, a piece of wood or something to pop that down. I don't honestly think I'm going to use that much of it, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, that's all I can think of. So, like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the thanks if you want to donate, and if you don't like what I'm doing, you don't know Jack. Bye.